What happens when the bond a husband and wife share leads them down a dark path? What are the consequences they face? These are the most notorious couples sentenced to capital punishment together. Alvin and Judith Neely, a married couple from the early 1980s, became widely known for their involvement in a series of disturbing events across Georgia and Alabama. Judith was born in 1964 in Tennessee. She met Alvin when she was just a teenager. He was 25 years older, already married, and deep into a life of illegal activities. The connection was instant and dangerous. They ran off together, living out of cheap motels in their car. By 16, Judith was pregnant with twins. Alvin left his wife, and the two got married, diving headfirst into a chaotic life on the run. From the start, their relationship was toxic. They survived by stealing, constantly getting arrested. Judith gave birth to 3 kids, while in and out of jail. But things took a darker turn in 1982. Before their most infamous actions, the Neelys were involved in several tragic events. On September 11, 1982, they shot at a youth development center employee named Ken Dooley. The next day, they firebombed the home of another employee, Linda Adair, using a Molotov cocktail. These acts were preceded by phone calls from a woman claiming to have been mistreated at the center, but neither victim could identify the caller's voice. On September 25, 1982, the Neelys took 13-year-old Lisa Ann Millison from a mall in Rome, Georgia. They transported her to a motel in Scottsboro, Alabama, where they held her captive. During her captivity, Lisa suffered repeated mistreatment by both Alvin and Judith. When attempts to poison her with drain cleaner failed to end her life, Judith shot Lisa in the back and disposed of her body in Little River Canyon. In October 1982, the Neelys took engaged couple Janice Chapman and John Hancock against their will. They shot Hancock, who survived, and took Chapman to their motel room, where she was tortured and later passed away. Hancock's testimony played a key role in identifying the Neelys as the perpetrators. The Neelys were caught in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, on October 9, 1982, after a 3-week investigation. Judith was charged with the passing of Lisa Millison and other horrific acts. During her trial, she claimed that Alvin had controlled her through constant mistreatment, portraying herself as a victim forced into doing terrible acts. Psychiatric evaluations determined she was capable of understanding the charges against her, and despite a jury recommending life imprisonment, Judge Randall Cole sentenced her to capital punishment by electric chair. Judith Neely was convicted and sentenced in 1983. Her sentence was later reduced to life imprisonment in 1999 by Governor Fob James, who honored the jury's recommendation. Judith was denied parole in 2018 and remains incarcerated. Alvin Neely passed away in prison in 2005 at the age of 56, but the next case? Oh, it is one of California's most unsettling stories. Cynthia Kaufman and James Gregory Marlo's involvement in a disturbing series of events in 1986. Cynthia Kaufman was born in 1962 in St. Louis, Missouri. She faced significant challenges early in life, including her father leaving, which led to her mother raising her alone. By 18, she was married and a mother, but that union crumbled quickly, and she was left searching for something: security, love, or maybe just an escape. She found it, or thought she did, in Arizona, where she crossed paths with James Marlo, a man recently released from prison. Marlo was originally from Kentucky. He had a history of illegal activity and had time spent at Folsom Prison, earning him the nickname the Folsom Wolf. In late July 1986, Cynthia and James married in Tennessee. As a wedding gift, Kaufman received a tattoo that read, "Property of the Folsom Wolf." Together, they hit the road, moving west. By October, they had reached California, and by November the horror began. But before we move on, don't forget to like and subscribe for more chilling content. On November 7, 1986, when they took 20-year-old Corinna Novus from an ATM in Redlands, California. Just 5 days later, they took 19-year-old Linnell Murray from her workplace in Huntington Beach. Their pattern was chillingly similar each time, targeting women who had just withdrawn cash from ATMs, talking them against their will, and then harming them. Afterward, they used the victims' credit cards for personal expenses. On November 14, 1986, a crucial break in the investigation came when Novus's checkbook and documents with Marlo's and Kaufman's names were found in a dumpster. This discovery led authorities to a lodge in Big Bear City, where the couple had recently checked in. A search near Big Bear Lake resulted in their arrest. At the time, they were found wearing clothes stolen from Murray's dry cleaning store, and Kaufman had possessions that belonged to the victims. During their trial, prosecutors presented evidence showing Kaufman's active involvement, but Kaufman testified that she had been a victim of Marlo's behavior, claiming he had subjected her to physical, emotional, and intimate torment, including threats against her and her family. On August 30, 1989, both Marlo and Kaufman were convicted for the harm done to Corinna Novus, and they received capital sentences. Kaufman became the first woman to receive such a sentence in California since the reinstatement of capital punishment in 1977. Our next case is unsettling, and yet impossible to look away from. Raymond Fernandez and Martha Beck, later nicknamed the Lonely Hearts Couple, began a string of cons that would eventually take a very dark turn. In the late 1940s, the troubling pair surfaced, using newspaper personal ads to find people they could take advantage of. Raymond Fernandez was born December 17, 1914, in Hawaii to Spanish parents. His family soon moved to Bridgeport, Connecticut. As a young man, he left for Spain, married, had 4 children, then walked away without looking back. He joined the Spanish Merchant Navy and later worked for British intelligence during World War II. After the war, a head injury changed him. Some say it damaged the part of his brain tied to impulse control. In prison for theft, a cellmate introduced him to voodoo. Raymond came out convinced he had a supernatural charm, especially over women. Martha Seabrook was born May 6, 1920 in Milton, Florida. A gland issue caused her to gain weight early on, making her a target for bullying. Her home life was worse. She claimed her brother mistreated her, and her mother beat her. Still, she became a nurse, moved to California, and had 2 children. Desperate for love, she made up tragic stories about the fathers to win sympathy. Obsessed with romance novels, she craved a storybook ending. In 1947, Martha placed a Lonely Hearts ad. Raymond answered. Their letters turned intense fast. Martha left her kids and moved to New York. She posed as his sister at first, but soon she was part of the scam, helping him seduce, swindle, and eventually eliminate women he met through personal ads. Why did she do it? Maybe love, maybe delusion, maybe both. But once they teamed up, the cons turned fatal, and there was no turning back. Their actions grew more serious over time. In 1949, they focused on Delphine Downing, a young widow in Michigan. When Delphine started to question Raymond's behavior, Martha, overcome with jealousy and fear of being exposed, ended Delphine's life. Afterwards, to avoid any loose ends, she ended the life of Delphine's 2-year-old daughter as well. This was the moment when their actions became much more severe and permanent. Their final victim was Janet Fay, a 66-year-old woman from New York. They had brought her in with promises of marriage, but when Martha saw Janet and Raymond being physically close, she lost control and hit Janet with a hammer. This ultimately ended Janet's life and would become the incident that led to their capture. The authorities arrested Raymond and Martha in Michigan not long after. Raymond admitted what they had done, but both denied involvement in several other cases they were suspected of. They were sent to New York to face charges only for what happened to Janet Fay. The courtroom was shocked by the strange and intense relationship between the two, and by the details of their actions. Why were they convicted based on just one case? Raymond's own words, along with strong evidence, were enough to bring the verdict. Both were found guilty and received the capital punishment. On March 8, 1951, at Sing Sing prison, that punishment was carried out. Raymond's final words showed how deeply connected he felt to Martha. "I want to shout it out. I love Martha. What do the public know about love?" Martha's last words were also focused on love. "My story is a love story, but only those tortured by love can understand what I mean. I have no hating in my heart today for anyone." Some parents correct, others control. But the next case? This went beyond comprehension. Samantha and John Allen, both born in 1988, lived in Phoenix, Arizona. Samantha was the cousin of 10-year-old Amy Deal, whom she and her husband John were responsible for caring for in their home. Tragically, the Allens, along with other family members, subjected Amy to constant and harsh mistreatment. This included forcing her to eat dog feces, crush aluminum cans barefoot, consume hot sauce, and endure frequent physical harm. On top of this, Amy was often locked in a small plastic storage box as a form of punishment. The box, measuring less than 3 feet in length, less than 1 foot in width, and 1 foot in depth, was a cramped and distressing environment for her. On July 11, 2011, Amy was punished for allegedly taking an ice pop from the refrigerator. As punishment, the Allens locked her in the small plastic box and left her confined overnight in an uncooled garage. The next morning, they discovered that Amy had tragically passed away from suffocation during the night. This case shocked the public, not just because of how extreme it was, but because it involved multiple members of the same family. During the trial, the defense team argued that Amy's passing was unintentional and not deliberate. John Allen expressed remorse, admitting that the events leading to Amy's passing were an accident and acknowledging his role in the incident. In August 2017, Samantha Allen was found guilty of first-degree homicide. She was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole. Just a few months later, in November, her husband John Allen was also convicted on first-degree homicide, along with several other serious charges tied to the way the young victim was treated. He, too, received a capital punishment. Together, they became the first married couple in Arizona's history to both get that level of punishment. Both Samantha and John Allen appealed their convictions and sentences. In 2020, the Arizona Supreme Court upheld Samantha Allen's conviction and sentence, rejecting her claims that prosecutors had unfairly suggested she was solely responsible for Amy's passing. Similarly, in 2018, John Allen's convictions and sentence were upheld by the Arizona Supreme Court. At his sentencing, John Allen expressed regret, stating, "I want to say that I'm sorry. What happened was an accident. I'm an idiot. I'm a jerk. It was an accident." Specific details about Samantha Allen's last words were not made publicly available. Were other family members held accountable for their involvement in Amy's mistreatment? Yes, several other family members were convicted for their roles in Amy's mistreatment. Cynthia Stoltzman, Amy's aunt and legal guardian, received a 24-year prison sentence after pleading guilty. Amy's grandmother, Judith Deal, was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Additionally, Amy's father, David Deal, was sentenced to 14 years in prison after pleading guilty too. The Arizona Supreme Court upheld Samantha Allen's conviction and sentence in 2020. Both are currently waiting for their sentence to be carried out. But what does desperation look like when you're no longer young, but still dangerous? In the late 1980s, Fay and Ray Copeland, an unassuming elderly couple from Mooresville, Missouri, would go down in history as the oldest pair ever sentenced to capital punishment in the United States. Their story revolves around greed, manipulation, and betrayal. Ray Copeland, born in 1914 in Oklahoma, had spent most of his life dancing along the edge of the law. Livestock theft, forged checks, fraud. He was a con man through and through. In 1940, he married Fay Della Wilson. She was born in 1921 in Harrison, Arkansas. The couple had 6 children and struggled financially, frequently moving from place to place due to Ray's illegal actions, which also led to multiple jail sentences. Because of his record, Ray couldn't legally buy cattle, so he came up with a scheme to take advantage of transient farmhands. He would hire drifters, have them write bad checks to purchase cattle on his behalf, and then sell the cattle, leaving the workers stranded without payment. Ray and Fay targeted drifters who were looking for work. After hiring them, Ray would involve them in these fraudulent cattle deals. The workers were then unalived and their bodies disposed of, usually buried on their farm. Investigators found a register listing the names of the workers, and next to 12 of them, including 5 of the victims, there was a crude X written by Fay, suggesting a systematic pattern of eliminating people. The main reason behind these acts seemed to be financial gain. By removing the workers workers, Ray ensured there were no witnesses to his fraudulent activities, allowing him to continue his schemes uninterrupted. This operation went on for years until 1989, when one former employee informed the authorities about suspicious activities on the Copeland farm. Whether Fay was directly involved or acted as an accomplice is still debated. She claimed to be a victim of Ray's behavior, but there is evidence suggesting that she played a more active role than she admitted. In October 1989, authorities executed a search warrant on the Copeland farm. There, they found human remains and a .22 caliber Marlin rifle that matched the weapons used in the eliminations. They also discovered a quilt made from the victim's clothing, which underscored the disturbing nature of the situation. Fay's defense team argued that she was a harmed woman under Ray's control, but the jury found her guilty, resulting in 4 life sentences and 1 long-term sentence. Ray Copeland was also convicted and sentenced to capital punishment. Upon hearing about Fay's sentence, Ray reportedly said, "Well, those things happen to some, you know." The couple became the oldest in the U.S. to face such consequences. Ray passed away from natural causes on October 19, 1993, at the age of 78, while still awaiting his sentence. Fay's sentence was reduced to life imprisonment in 1999 after appeals highlighted her history of mistreatment. She was released in 2002 due to declining health and passed away in a nursing home on December 23, 2003, at the age of 82. What are your thoughts on this case? Let us know in the comments below. Lisa Jo Chamberlain was born in 1976. By March 2004, she was living in Hattiesburg, Mississippi with her boyfriend, Roger Lee Gillett. The two were staying at the home of Gillett's cousin, Vernon Hewlett, and his girlfriend, Linda Heinzelman. Lisa and Roger already had a history, run-ins with the law, mostly for illegal substances and theft. But what happened in that house would overshadow anything they'd ever done before. Tension had been building. Money was tight. Rumors say Roger was angry about being told to move out. That tension boiled over. According to Chamberlain, it all started as a theft. They believed there was a safe in the house, but when Vernon and Linda couldn't or wouldn't open it, things turned aggressive. What followed was horrifying. Linda Heinzelman was harmed and then suffocated with a plastic bag. She suffered for hours, and it didn't stop there. Afterward, Chamberlain and Gillett transported the victims' bodies in Heinzelman's truck to a remote farm near Russell, Kansas, which belonged to Gillett's grandfather. They hid the bodies in a freezer. The bodies were discovered when law enforcement officers who were initially searching for illegal substances found the freezer containing the remains. Both Chamberlain and Gillett were brought back to Mississippi to stand trial for their involvement in the incident. They were charged with 2 counts of first-degree homicide, which could result in a life sentence without the possibility of parole under Mississippi law. During the trial, Chamberlain's defense team argued that her troubled past, including struggles with post-traumatic stress disorder and borderline personality disorder, influenced her actions. They suggested that her history of mistreatment contributed to her involvement in the situation. Both Chamberlain and Gillett were found guilty and initially sentenced to life imprisonment. However, in 2018, Gillett's sentence was changed to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. As of 2025, Chamberlain remains the only woman in Mississippi waiting for her capital punishment to be carried out. She is currently held at the Central Mississippi Correctional Facility. Alton Coleman was born on November 6, 1955, in Waukegan, Illinois. He was raised mainly by his grandmother, as his mother worked multiple jobs. From a young age, Coleman had multiple run-ins with the law. Between 1973 and 1983, he faced charges 6 times related to serious offenses, 2 of which were later dismissed. In 1973, he pled guilty to armed theft after taking and harming a woman, serving 3 years in prison. Deborah Brown, born on November 11, 1962, had no history of any wrongdoings before meeting Coleman. She was described as having a dependent personality, possibly linked to a head injury she sustained as a child. This vulnerability made her more susceptible to Coleman's influence. At the age of 21, Brown ended her engagement and left her family to join Coleman, who was then facing legal troubles for the mistreatment of a young girl. In May 1984, fearing imprisonment, Coleman and Brown began a series of horrific acts across Illinois, Wisconsin, Michigan, Indiana, Kentucky, and Ohio. Their victims ranged from young children to elderly individuals, with many of the incidents occurring within African American communities, allowing them to gain trust more easily. Their first known victim was 9-year-old Vernita Wheat from Kenosha, Wisconsin. On May 29, 1984, Coleman took Vernita to Waukegan, Illinois. Her body was found 3 weeks later in an abandoned building near Coleman's grandmother's home. She had been harmed and left in a state of distress. Coleman and Brown escalated their horrific acts. They used deception to gain entry into the homes of their victims. For example, in Norwood, Ohio, they posed as potential buyers of a trailer to enter the home of Harry and Marlene Walters. Inside, they harmed the couple, leading to Marlene's passing and serious injuries to Harry. Their widespread actions prompted the FBI to add Coleman to their 10 most wanted list on July 12, 1984. A large-scale manhunt ensued, culminating in their arrest on July 20, 1984, in Evanston, Illinois. Authorities from several states worked together to determine the best legal approach, aiming for the highest penalties. Ohio was chosen as the starting point due to the seriousness of the offenses committed there. In Ohio, both Coleman and Brown were found responsible for the passing of Marlene Walters and Tunny Story. During sentencing, Brown showed little remorse, sending a note to the judge that read, "I unalived her and I don't give a damn. I had fun out of it." Later, trials in Indiana led to further convictions for harmful actions, and both Coleman and Brown received severe sentences. Coleman was also sentenced to 100 additional years, while Brown received an additional 40 years for other illegal actions. At the time, Alton Coleman was the only person in the country to receive capital sentences in 3 states: Ohio, Indiana, and Illinois. After many years of legal challenges, he was put to rest through a legal process on April 26, 2002, at the Southern Ohio Correctional Facility in Lucasville, Ohio. Deborah Brown's sentences were commuted over time. In 1991, her sentence in Ohio was reduced to life imprisonment without the possibility of release, taking into account her low IQ and her submissive role in her relationship with Coleman. Her sentence in Indiana was also commuted, and she continues to serve her life sentence at the Ohio Reformatory for Women. In his final hours, Alton Coleman showed no visible remorse for his actions. He ordered an elaborate last meal that included filet mignon, fried chicken, salad, sweet potato pie, French fries, collard greens, onion rings, cornbread, broccoli with cheese, biscuits with gravy, and a cherry Coke. As he was led to the room where his legal sentence was fulfilled, he recited the 23rd Psalm, "The Lord is my shepherd."